Welcome to Beat Diabetes. On today's program, we'll hear from a man who knew just enough about diabetes to really help a friend. Actually, it was his father's friend who had come over to the house and told him and his father he was fed up with diabetes meds. He was just going to give up. But this man gave him a little simple explanation that made all the difference. The man went home, made some changes, lost a bunch of weight, and his A1c dove down into the 5's. This individual says, my father's friend is in his 60s. Just prior to the lockdowns, he came over to visit. He said he had given up and he was not going to take his diabetes meds anymore. They made him sick. What a horrible expression that is. He had given up. Well, I understand that some diabetes meds can make some people sick, and if you have to take meds, try to find something that doesn't. But this person says, as this man came over, his father's friend, he says, I explained my layman's understanding of diabetes. In other words, I'm not an expert, I'm not a doctor, I don't know everything, but I knew a little bit. And I explained it to him. And lo and behold, the man said, I'm going to quit all carbs. Well, most times when people say I'm going to quit all carbs, they're talking about the really high carb foods, not necessarily all. I haven't quit all carbs. I eat salads, they have carbs. I eat avocados, they have carbs. I eat peanuts and walnuts and pecans, they have carbs. So if I quit all carbs, all I would eat would be meat. I doubt that's what he was saying, but I suspect he was saying I'm going to quit all the high carb foods. So this person says, just gives him, as he puts it, his layman's understanding of diabetes. Well, it must have been a pretty good understanding. The man said he's going to quit all carbs. He lost 75 pounds, and his blood sugars are now in the 5.7 range. Wow. Not because he went to a lot of expensive $500 per session nutritionist classes, but because this one fella, I assume it's a fella, might have been a lady, I'm not sure. This one person said, well, I just told him what I knew about diabetes. Apparently, they've watched a few of my videos and probably some others from others that say similar things. I just gave him my understanding of it, layman's understanding. The person says, I'm going to try it. Lost 75 pounds. Now he's in the 5's club. And he has turned his life entirely around. How beautiful is that? That is just awesome. You know, I like the fact that he says, I explained what I knew. I explained. There's power, my friend, in explanation. And that's what I try to do. In fact, it's my approach to almost everything. You know, teaching the Bible, for example. I'm really more of an explainer than I am a preacher. And there are some people that will pound the pulpit and stomp around and shout and sweat and get red-faced, and I can shout with the best of them. And when I'm in Africa, a lot of times I do because they won't listen to you long if you don't. But while I'm preaching, I'm explaining. I'm saying, okay, here's point number 1, point number 2, and here's what the Apostle Paul said, here's what John said, here's what Jesus said. Now, when it came to diabetes, and I'd been preaching for years before I ever started this diabetes ministry, I just took the same approach. It's like, well, I want to be an explainer. I want to be a teacher. I want to explain how things work. And by the way, that's one reason I do something that very few YouTube channel folks do. When I tell people, well, please give us a thumbs up. A lot of people do that, but they'll never explain why. They'll just say, be sure and like this video. Be sure and give it a thumbs up. They'll never explain why. And so when I used to hear that, when I didn't know much about YouTube, I thought, well, I guess they just like to look at all those likes, and it makes them feel good, gives them a good feeling inside. It was only later that I realized why so many of them were saying that, and that is that the YouTube algorithm picks up on the fact that a lot of people are liking a video, and then they'll recommend it to others more. But anyway, when I started encouraging people to like our videos, I didn't just tell them to like it. I told them why. I told them because YouTube will recognize the value of the video and they'll promote it to others, and more people will get to see it. There's power in explanation. And so if you want to move somebody, don't just shout at them. Don't just say, well, you got to stop fruit and you got to stop all that candy and you got to stop those Cokes and that fruit juice is terrible and do this and don't do that. I don't like to be shouted at. I don't like to be told what to do. But if somebody will explain it to me, if they will calmly tell me what's going on, what I need to do and why I need to do it, I'll listen. And that's what this individual did. They just explained it as best they could, and it worked. The guy says, you know what, I'm going to change, and bam, the weight comes off, the numbers go down, all is well. Wow, wow, wow. All right, well, this is from a lady. She says, I found something interesting in my own glucose tests, and she says, I record everything every day. So this is a very serious researcher into her own metabolic health. I like that. I like people that will become an expert on their own bodies. And some people want to know, what are your credentials? You're not a doctor, are you? The answer is no. You're not a nutrition, are you? The answer is no. You haven't studied at the university level about all these things. The answer is no. I've read quite a few books. But most of all, I am an expert. Listen carefully. I am an expert on my own body and how it responds to various foods. And that's kind of what this channel is built on, is here's what's happened to me, here's how it works for me, and lo and behold, it seems to work about that way for most people. So that's my expertise. My expertise is I know how my body reacts to foods. And this lady is the same way. She says, I record everything every day. Highly processed grain products will spike my blood sugar, but I'll see really low or normal levels within a couple of hours. Now, I find that interesting. Highly processed, like white bread, a white bread roll, corn chips perhaps, highly processed, high-carb foods will spike it up high. But within a couple of hours, she says, it'll usually get back to close to normal. However, minimally processed foods, like natural whole grain bread, she puts it in quotes, will stubbornly be persistent in keeping my glucose levels higher for longer. I find that interesting, and I've seen similar things. She says, I have to be really careful with these. Some of the worst carbs, things like white bread, dinner rolls, Fruit Loops cereal, Cocoa Puff cereal, Sugar Pop cereal, all the really nasty, yucky, white flour, sugary foods. They'll jack it up high, but a lot of times it will drop down low fairly quickly. The reason is your pancreas goes into overdrive. It knows an enemy has broken through the gates, and so it's going to dump out prodigious amounts of insulin, if you've got a pancreas that still functions well, to try to deal with that, and before long, your blood sugar may actually go low. But what she's saying is you'll get zip up and zip right back down pretty quickly with these highly processed, high-carb foods. But with some of the others that have more fiber to them, it won't go down as quickly. And that really is the reason some people can maintain a pretty good A1c on a high-carb diet for a while. So they're eating corn on the cob and a big plate of brown rice and some other high-carb foods, maybe drinking some fruit juice, and they jump up really high. A lot of them will never test at 1 hour because they know it would be way too high, or at least their doctors know, or their so-called health gurus know that. So they never encourage you to test at 1 hour after eating. But it'll jump up real high, maybe 200, 250 after a meal, and then it will drop and drop and drop and drop. And sometimes you'll even get a little shaky as a result. So up and down, but the average isn't too bad in many cases for quite a long while. Because even though you're going really high, you're also dropping quite low. And when you average it out, it's not so bad. So some people will say, well, I beat diabetes. I went to a high carb, white rice and sugar, baby, white rice and sugar, and now my A1c is pretty good. It may be, because you're going through that up and down kind of a thing. Of course, you're going to be hungry all the time because when you drop low, you're going to be ravenous. But worse than that, That will only go on for a while, and the while could be 10 years. Nobody can say, but it will often never last a lifetime. Because what will happen is after a while, your pancreas will give out, your metabolic system will break down, and you'll go up like you always did, but you won't drop down nearly so fast. So you go way up, and then you kind of float around at that upper range, and that's the worst of all. And that's when your A1c jumps up. And so maybe just a year before you had an A1c of 5.9, and now you've got an A1c of 9.5. And you're going, what happened? I've been in the 5's A1c for years and years and years, and in 1 year's time, I've gone from 5.9 to 9.5. What in the world happened? Well, what happened was probably in those previous years, you were up and down, and finally you just blew out your pancreas and your metabolic system just broke down and your cells became so resistant that they just gave out. And now you're going up just like you always did, but it's taken you forever to drop down. And then you're going up and it's taking you forever to drop down. And that's when the doctor says to you, excuse me, you've got severe diabetes. And you're wondering, how can this happen? Because I've been so good for so long. So the up and down thing is not a good thing. And this person says, I've noticed that the worst foods for jacking it up real high and then dropping it down real low are the highly processed foods. And I would say, yeah, I think that's right. I think I can eat a bowl of Cocoa Puffs. I think I did that on one of our YouTube tests, and I got up close to 200. But within 2 hours, I was back down to like 130 or so. So it was a fast ride up and then a pretty fast ride down. Whereas there's other foods that I don't go up nearly so high, but I don't drop down quite so fast. But that's kind of the nature of a high-carb diet. And to me, that's just metabolic suicide, tell you the truth. You can get by with it for a while, and you may even be proud. Look at my A1c, it's 5.5. But with all those ups and downs, you're not doing yourself a whole lot of favor. If you've recently been diagnosed with diabetes and you've just discovered this channel, let me recommend that you go to our Uploads page, which will give you access to every diabetic video we've posted since we began. As you work your way through all our videos, I believe you'll find the help you need. A link to our Uploads page is in the description.